Welcome to the Creative Agency Success Show, the go-to resource for agency owners looking to scale their business. Join us every week to stay ahead of the curve and position your agency for future success.
Hey y'all, it's podcast takeover time. I'm Joey Kinney with the Young CPA Success Show, and we did a show a while back with Donna Serdula, the LinkedIn makeover expert. Even though our episode is focused more on how young professionals can beef up their LinkedIn presence, the conversation is also relevant for our friends in the creative and digital space. So we wanted to share it with you. Jody and Jamie will be back next week. For now, please enjoy our conversation with Donna. Donna, I'm really excited for this because Hannah and I have talked about this before. Like, the joke I always say about myself is like I'm the worst millennial ever, in that I just am terrible at social media and LinkedIn and all of these types of things. And I know I'm not the only one, because, obviously you've been able to kind of do like an entire company around like helping people with LinkedIn and those types of things. So obviously we'd love to lean into that in the show. Is there anything else that, you are like particularly excited about that's going on in your life that we could talk about? We don't really have much of a set agenda. We like it to just be a free-flowing conversation and just kind of chatting.
I love to chat. I love to chat. Things that I love to talk about. I love to talk about LinkedIn. I love to talk about, a person's brand and how to, it's not so much like it's not like LinkedIn really that people are, it's putting themselves out there. It's like, it's sort of like the psychology underneath it. It's how do I tell my story? How do I position myself? And it's getting deliberate, and right. Really deciding this is how I want to be perceived and let me control it. So I love talking about that. Love talking about even getting loud on LinkedIn. Because at one time there was just, it was a passive platform. I put out a great looking profile, stuff would come to you, but now it's a little different. Like you do have to, it really has become a true networking platform, and you've got to join that conversation. You got to get loud. How do you get loud? This is your career. There's no, like we were just saying about, doing a live show, like you're scared of little mistakes and things like that. That's
this guy.
Yeah. And that's
so intimidating.
It's intimidating. It's scary. This is your career. This is your business. Can you eat? Like, it's better to remain, what is that old saying? It's better to remain silent and have people think you're dumb than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Right?
Exactly.
That's the deal.
Yeah, I feel like I struggle on LinkedIn because it's like for so long, I think I perceived LinkedIn as being this place where it like should be my resume and like just truly like be like this very professional version of myself and like what my career is. And I feel like there's been this shift, and I've seen this shift in people that I follow on LinkedIn, of it being more of, like you said, like that personal brand and telling your story and being more personal and like kind of pulling back the curtain a little bit more than what maybe LinkedIn was initially created for and like the purpose of that platform. So that's been really interesting to me to see. But again, kind of like using that same adjective, it's intimidating. Like that's how I feel about potentially pulling back the curtain to that audience, which is interesting because I'm not afraid to do that like on Facebook or Instagram or anything. So
different audience.
Yeah. How do you find that balance between like, yes, I want this to be the professional platform, but I also want to let people into like who I am beyond my profession.
I was thinking about what Hannah was saying, and Hannah, I go back to that meme, and I'm sure you've seen the meme where it's like, you've got the 4 different personalities of like who you are on Facebook, who you are on Instagram, who you are on Twitter, and who you are on LinkedIn. And like the Twitter version, like I guess the LinkedIn version of me has like a suit and tie. And the Twitter version of me is like, wearing a helmet with 2 beer cans at a K-State football game. Like there's just
Joey,
different ones.
Can I tell you my big pet peeve? Something that you just said. All right. This is something that I have. This is something that I have fought forever. And that is the idea of LinkedIn in a suit and tie.
Yeah.
I hate that.
Like, I hate it. I hate it. There's women on, right? And 2, who wears a suit and tie anymore? Like, is that indicative of really anything? So in some ways, what we were just discussing, which is there's been the shift. I think the shift is that in itself, it's this idea of this stuffy, traditional, you know, tie. Like, where's the tie? But still this idea of the tie.
Yeah.
Like,
Like, if I
no,
think
it's
like, if LinkedIn, like, were to develop some sort of persona, like, it literally would come out to me, and, like, I envision that being, like, a man in a suit and tie. Like, it's what I envision LinkedIn to be.
No, Hannah, I
and
think
so
about like,
we've got to kill that. We've got to obliterate that concept, because who
Mhm.
is that person, that suit and tie? It's that judgy person who's going, are they really
Yes.
posting the right thing? Are they really, are they showing too much personality, too much warmth, too much humanity?
no, it's so interesting because I think back to like a place that I worked previously, which was, I don't want to, spill too much tea on the podcast or air the dirty laundry, but there was it was an industry that does kind of fall into some of these more traditional stereotypes. And there was a gentleman who worked at the firm who said, there is a there is like a uniform that you wear to this job. You are only able to do it if you're wearing a white collared shirt, a blue collared shirt, and a tie. That we used to call that the uniform. And
He came from IBM, right? He had to
oh
have.
Had to.
yeah, it was in the real estate industry, so
Okay.
it's kind of one of those ones where, I'm not gonna. My response was always, "Hey, man, do you like if that works for you? Like if you like getting up in the morning and putting on a tie because that makes you feel good, it makes you feel like empowered, and like there's something sometimes kind of fun about dressing up. Right? Like, I love to dress up and go to a fun restaurant or
Mhm.
to a play or to a musical or something. But the thing that always bugged me about it was like that can't be the expectation for everybody.
Yeah.
Like that suit and tie does not indicate whether or not you can do the job or whether somebody else can do the job.
Yeah.
And that was the
Yeah.
thing that I always tried to divorce myself from. And that was I mean, I'm sitting here at home in my home office wearing, a lovely, nice, light, sweatshirt type thing. I've got, sweatpants on and my Ugg moccasins on my feet. And that outfit doesn't change whether or not I can do accounting or whether or not I can do
Yeah.
consulting. And that's been the greatest shift, I think, in the last 10 years, to your point, is that we are understanding that excellence comes in all shapes, sizes, genders, backgrounds. Excellence can come
Mhm.
from anywhere.
Yeah. And it's so limiting, right?
Hmm.
To think of it in such a, what's professional is this traditional image, and that's not true anymore. And it's nice to expand outside of that and to say, LinkedIn is it's connections, it's a network, it
Hmm.
is professional, it is career oriented. Thank goodness for that, right? We
Yeah.
don't want it to be completely a personal type of situation, but at the same time, I think we are seeing such a huge change in how we work, and working from home
Hmm.
brings in this whole new personal element, so we have to embrace that.
Mhm. And one thing that you talked about too earlier when we were talking pre-show was about like your personal brand. And I think that LinkedIn provides a beautiful platform
Hmm.
for somebody at any stage in their career to potentially start to develop their personal brand. I think that's one thing that I wish I'd probably done more of early on in my career,
Yeah.
especially because I feel like personal brand is so important because outside of your employer, because that may not be forever and that may
Oh,
not be like who you are. So I think that's just so important. So like, how do you even do that? Like, I want you to speak to somebody who's like, what even is a brand and what does that even look like?
everyone has one.
Hmm.
Believe it or not, you have one. Whether you cultivated it, that's something totally different. But everyone does come with a brand, and it's basically, how are people perceiving you?
Hmm.
Are people noticing you? Are people remembering you? Are people associating you with a certain qualities, or work ethic or expectations, right?
Hmm.
And the hope is, the desire is that we control this brand, and we don't just leave it to other people to judge us and make assumptions, right? That's where there's issues, and that's when people start to find themselves pigeonholed or stuck, or
Yeah.
not going in the direction that they want. For me, the idea of a brand it's really about empowering. It's empowering a person to say, you know this is who I am. This is what I do. And this is the direction I want to hit. I have a vision for myself. I've got a mission, right? And how can I put myself out there consistently through my values, through my actions, through the descriptions that I use and how I show up to work on Zoom, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, any place where I'm leaving a bread trail. How can I make sure that bread trail is always pumpernickel?
Right.
It's consistent, but the nice thing is, you can make pivots through, as well. I don't want you to think that it always has to be pumpernickel. And if you decide you suddenly want it to be sourdough, you can do that. But at the same time, the idea is, you're consistently showing up and you're creating a network, you're forging relationships. Now, what does this all mean? All right, I'm talking all these things. So ultimately, you become a person who doesn't have to look for a job. Jobs find you. Right? You become a person whose phone rings because there's opportunities, because people know you, they remember you, they've worked with you, they know the type of work that you do, and they want to work with you again. Right? Yeah. It's that idea. And think to yourself, if I was to just think of like an industry or something, like sometimes there's a person who just always pops up. Like, I need a recruiter. I always think of Ed Hahn because he's always there on LinkedIn. He's always there on Facebook. He's always talking about it. He's very consistent with his messaging. So whenever I need a recruiter, he's the one that I call because he's just right there, top of mind. And that's what we want to achieve for ourselves in our professions, wherever we may sit within, the different industries.
I think there's a really good lesson here, not just for young CPAs, but for really anybody, right? Which is, as I think that when I think about my parents, right, and I think about, because both my parents were accountants, so same industry. When I think about the advice that they gave me growing up, they were very focused on skills. Skills matter. Build your skills, build your toolbox, build all those things. Yes, very important. But when I think about when we're making hiring decisions, when we're figuring out who we want to work with, as I've moved up into management roles, I've started caring less and less about skill and more about who and what that person does. And I want to brag on Hannah for a second here, because we don't often get to talk about on this podcast like what we do outside of the podcast in our daily work. Hannah is an exceptional accountant. She's an exceptional CFO, and she can do all the things we need her to do. What's most enjoyable about working with Hannah is that she brings her whole self to her work. So when we're talking with a client and there's a moment where she needs to make a connection, she's going to go to her kids. She's going to go to her passions. She's going to go to her family, those types of things that she can bring her whole self. And it makes her a more complete CFO. And that's the shift when I think about branding on LinkedIn and those types of things. That's what I want to see from people. That's what I want to bring to my LinkedIn, and I'm terrible at it. I don't know how to do it, but it's so important.
Hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to write about yourself. And it's also hard to know what to write and how to make it sound. And it's one thing to hit a button and have it generated for you, right? And like, oh, okay. But is it really touching upon all the points, and is it producing the correct response within the reader? Like, those are all really important pieces. But what you've said is, how can I articulate, my brand, my story, my mission, and how can I showcase that I'm warm, I'm human, I'm passionate, I'm mission driven, I'm enthusiastic, I'm friendly, right? These are really important pieces. And we want to show them, and so I think the first thing when you're thinking about LinkedIn is, one, we need to think about our goal. Why are we on it? Are we doing this for reputation management? Are we doing this for branding? Are we doing this for prospecting and sales? Are we doing this to be seen as a thought leader? It could hit a whole bunch of these, or it could be very specific. But let's really get clear, why are we on it? Because if we're looking for a job, the way we present ourselves is going to be different if we are doing this for prospecting or sales or even for thought leadership, right? So there's different stories to be told depending upon our goal. There's also different stories to be told depending upon our target audience. Is it a high level executive? Is it a small business owner? They have different desires and needs that they want from you. So let's really get clear on who that audience is so we can cater our content specifically to them. That's important. And then we need to say to ourselves, if we want to get found, what are those keywords that people might be using to find someone like us? All right, because we want to use those keywords contextually. We want to make sure that they're in some pretty sensitive fields within our profile. That helps us rise in the search engine ranking or the search results. Then, all right. So we haven't even.
Yeah, so we're like scratching the surface here.
Exactly.
Yeah, we haven't even done anything. It's all right now. It's just the strategy piece. Then you've got to say to yourself, guess what? This is going to take me more than 5 minutes to do.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that was a question that I had queued up, that maybe we talk about it now, maybe we talk about it later. But I'm always like, who's even got the time to LinkedIn, and how do you make the time? I don't want to derail your thought there, because I think you were running, but I do want to touch base on that later once we've kind of defined everything. Is like, what's even the right amount? Like, how much time should I be putting to this?
Yeah. Well, and it's different, right? Because with LinkedIn, there's different levels of activity, right? And so when we think about the profile, and that's just the foundational aspect of LinkedIn, you're going to have to put some time into it. It's not like it's just going to happen, like this. And I think that's the issue. People go, oh, I've got 5 minutes. If you have 5 minutes, what are you going to do? You're going to copy and paste a resume.
Right.
And then it's going to be misaligned to your target audience because you're not looking for a job, or maybe if you are looking for a job, maybe then you're grabbing an old out of date one, and you're focused too much on the past and not the future. So recognize first and foremost that this is not easy. It takes time. And it's iterative, right? So you're going to find that you may have to take a couple passes to get it to where it needs to be. And it's also okay, to turn and say, you know what, I want to work with someone. And maybe it's, I want an AI tool to help me. That, maybe that works. Or maybe it's, I do want to work with a human being, someone that I could talk to, someone who can draw this out of me, someone who can listen and connect these dots and create something that's fabulous, because it is hard to write about ourselves. It's really, really hard. It's totally normal. It's true for everybody, even the best writers. When it comes to themselves, it's a struggle.
Yeah, I do. I struggle with that. And I feel like that because I struggle with that, and because there's so much psychology like that goes on behind that as well, I end up getting just paralysis whenever it comes to like posting. I'm just like, I don't know what to say. So I'm just not going to say anything at all. Like, so then it's like, it's just not worth it. Like, I can't do it. And LinkedIn is an interesting platform in that I think obviously, if you're on LinkedIn, it will show you like people who view your profile. And that makes me feel some type of way sometimes whenever I go look and see like somebody has viewed my profile and I'm like, what are they looking at? Why are they here? Who are they? Why would they even be looking at me? And especially that's been heightened, especially with the show, is I feel like I've like seen an increase in that, especially with people like reaching out to connect or for whatever reason. But it adds to just that negative like psychology, like that voice and that narrative in my head of what people are thinking of and like how I'm perceived, and just it's a struggle. So I get to a point where it's just like, I'm just not even going to post. I'm just not going to do it.
Well,
it's
Hannah,
safer
I think
for me to not post.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet you're hurting yourself
I know.
at the same time, right? Because it is, there's so much to gain, and you have to recognize that there is a bit of vulnerability here. There is a small element of risk, but at the same time, I will tell you, LinkedIn is a lovely, kind network. It's a great platform, and the people are good. They're understanding. I've been on it forever. And on a whole, I mean, not even on a whole, you're not going to find people, because it's professionally driven, people do tend to stay more positive because of that. And that's a good thing.
I see a lot less trolling on LinkedIn than I do on other slightly more anonymized sources and places for that. So that is comforting to me, where, as someone who tends to, I've always said, I don't want to be Michael Jordan in any situation, but I do want to be the guy who jumps off the bench and gives Michael Jordan a high five. That's a really good role for me to play. So I tend to gravitate more towards those empowering, positive type things than what, I find some of the other social medias, which is, man, what's the best joke I can make, or how funny can I be? How witty can I be? Those types of things. So
Yeah.
I do enjoy that aspect of LinkedIn in terms of like building the network in that manner, and surrounding yourselves with people who are going to challenge you,
Yeah.
but maybe challenge you in a way that's good for
And
growth.
positive and helpful,
Yeah.
right? And going back to Hannah, what you were saying, in some ways, I think a lot of that fear, when a person is, why are these people checking me out? What are they seeing? I almost feel that if you were to take control, right? Really take control of the image as you are on LinkedIn, and say, you know what, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to really make sure that this profile resonates, and it is truly me. It's authentic. It's a manifesto. It talks about how I help people, why I do what I love, what it means, what I represent. And you have it out there in a manner where when you look at it, it feels good, and you smile. All of those people who are coming to check it out, now suddenly that you're it's almost like going getting dressed up to see people, right? It's you're making that it's that effort, and now I'm happy. It's like going to the grocery store, when you're like all sloppy and you don't want to meet anyone. You don't want anyone to see you.
Been there,
So
done that.
right. Oh, and like whenever you do, that's when you
You're
see
gonna.
people.
That's
You're gonna
right.
meet. It always happens. Same thing with LinkedIn. It's like, let's make sure that it's telling the right story. It's aligned to your goals. It's that manifesto. It's not just a dull, out of date resume. It's not just this place where I'm bragging. But it's telling the story in a very natural, good way. And I think when you do that, when people start to hit the profile, you're happy. You're happy because they're seeing the best of you. And you're in control of the image. And you might also find that you're more apt to visit other people's profiles. And talking about building business, don't when a person comes to hire you or talk to you about you working with them, they want to know that you did your due diligence, that you checked out their resume and you checked out their profile and they checked out your, the website, and you're coming educated and researched and ready to help them. Right. And so in some ways, having that strong image and definitely utilizing the ability that people see that you check them out, that's shows that you're committed.
I tell young, new CFOs in our organization, if they're doing a client onboarding or something, I'm like, hey, what you just described, that's table stakes. Like if a CFO hops into a meeting and they haven't looked at the website and looked at all the people and, gone to everybody's LinkedIn. Hannah and I joke because like when she was in that situation, it's been a number of months at this point, but she and I both were like visiting the website at the same time, like doing all of our research. Was like, yeah, we Google everybody. We Google everybody.
I put my FBI hat on whenever I get a new client and start seeing all I can find on the internet.
Yeah, and I feel like that's table stakes at this point for just like even being able to engage in any type of thing. I want to know who I'm talking to, who I'm working with, what these types of things are, and that's exciting. And also maybe a little bit scary for someone who maybe hasn't invested the amount of time that they need to in making sure that the image that's portrayed online. And I love that you're mentioning the word storytelling, because that's a very common theme throughout a lot of our podcasts. It's just we haven't cultivated that, but that's how important and prevalent it is it's pervasive through a lot of the things that we talk about. When you start working with somebody who comes to you and says, Donna, I really need some help with my LinkedIn, what's like your average client starting place for that? Because I would imagine it's people probably think, oh, I'm too far gone to be able to start. And I bet they're closer to the average than they think.
You know what I always say though, when people come to me and they're like, "Ah, like I'm so far behind, like I should," there's that adage, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is today.
Mm-hmm.
So it's better to get started now. Dig your well before you're thirsty, certainly, but
Mm-hmm.
like let's just get started. Let's get started. And oftentimes people say, "Oh, I need a LinkedIn profile." And what I find and what I always say is, why? Why do you
Mm-hmm.
need a LinkedIn profile? Like, what's really going on here? And when I start to dig, that's when we start to really uncover the true issue. It's never really it's not really the profile, right? It's something happened. They missed a promotion. They lost a client.
Mm-hmm.
They need to recruit better talent. They need to prospect more effectively. There's a lot of other things going on there. It's never just let's build a brand to build a brand. Let's build a brand because we're trying to build something bigger.
Yeah, and you hit on there's an emotional component to that, which again, that's the throughput from storytelling. Storytelling is all emotional, right? There's an emotional connection there that's being made, and I like that. You're identifying pretty quickly that LinkedIn is just the tool.
Mhm.
That is not the reason. That is not the end goal. That is the means to the end in
Mhm.
terms of what that is, and I think that makes it a little less scary for me, that it's like, no, this is just a tool that you're using
Yeah.
to achieve this larger goal.
And I really do believe that success on LinkedIn is getting off LinkedIn. And what do I mean by that? I'm not saying permanently off LinkedIn, because LinkedIn isn't going anywhere, and
Mhm.
it's a long-term, long-haul strategy. But the success that you're going to find is in the real world relationships.
Right.
And so, yes, you might be meeting people on LinkedIn, but I don't want it to always stay on LinkedIn. I want you to pick up the phone. I want you to meet the person for coffee. I want this to extend beyond just the platform.
Yeah, it's an accelerator is really all it
Mhm.
is.
Yeah.
Mhm. And I'm seeing a lot of parallels too. So I'm reading the book right now, Built to Last by Jim Collins. So I'm seeing a lot of parallels in terms of like the foundational aspects of a business, in terms of the things that make businesses, the businesses that have been around for decades, is just those core values, and staying true to those core values is one of the things that's talked about in this book. And I feel like there's a lot of parallel in that in terms of for us personally, especially
Yeah.
as we start to develop that brand and who we show up as. I think there's some work that maybe a lot of us haven't taken the time to do whenever it comes to our presence on LinkedIn, in terms of even figuring out who we are and
Yeah.
what we stand for, and like putting pen to paper and solidifying some of those core values and like how we want to show up. I know that's something that, thankfully, like I was in a role where I did do that. So like I have my own like personal like vision statement, mission statement. But like I feel like, had I not been forced to do that, I wouldn't have done it just on my own. I may have like had some like very lofty, like very foggy idea of like who I was and like what that looked like, but it was never solid. So I feel like for a lot of what you're saying, like it does take some work in that
Yeah.
regard, in terms of even figuring out who you are and how you want to show up.
And what you said is so true. It's so true. LinkedIn is the perfect excuse. It's that challenge. It's that reason to get deliberate and to really start to think about your brand. If you didn't have that LinkedIn profile and people hitting it and knowing that that's how you're being introduced to people, and it's your first impression, it would be easy to say, you know what, I'll do it another time. I'm not going to bother. But having it there, it really does. It presents itself with, it's the perfect excuse to finally say, enough. I've got to sit down. I've got to figure this out. And I've got to present myself in the right way. And you want to do it in a future forward type of way, right? Because that's the other thing. Oftentimes people say, oh, I'm pigeonholed. Oh, I feel stuck. Maybe it's really the way you're presenting yourself. You've been presenting yourself the same way for so long, and you forgot that you have to keep updating it, and you have to keep iterating it, and it does need to change. And when you start to feel that, ooh, I'm stuck, or why am I receiving these old types of opportunities, or opportunities that are just not qualified for me. It's time to revisit, because maybe you did all of those things, 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 3 years ago, right when you got out of college, but now you're more seasoned. It's something that you have to keep revisiting and recalibrating. And so, when people do look at you, they're looking not just at what you're doing, but what you're capable and what that vision you have for yourself is.
And I think sometimes too, and I think about this a lot in the context of personal growth and journeys and those types of things. I'll be the first to admit, if I go back and look at something that I posted in 2010 when I was in college, it pains my soul a little bit.
Nobody embarrasses me more than 2008 me on
100%.
Facebook. Like the memories, I'm like, oh my gosh.
I thought, what? And what were those shoes, right? Those are the questions that I asked myself. But I love this idea of like LinkedIn also, but LinkedIn is a verb, right? It's an action. It's a thing that you have to do. And it's not a crock pot type situation. It's not a put it in the morning, set it, forget it, and it's good forever, right? And I really, when I think about myself and trying to encourage, changes in values, changes in the way you see the world, like, growth is something to be, celebrated and enjoyed and embraced. And I know sometimes I'm thinking specifically about, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, and how like everyone was going back and looking at Travis Kelce's tweets from college. And he's like, hey, you can't spell squirrel. What's going on here? And it's like, yes, but also let's say that maybe in the last 10 years, he's learned how to spell squirrel. So let's acknowledge, instead of going back and, focusing on the past, let's acknowledge that growth that he's made. And that's how I think about LinkedIn is, I want to celebrate the growth that people have had, both in their careers and the way they see the world and the connections that they've made. And that's kind of my challenge to the audience and to myself, really, is let's start putting that on paper and let's start sharing those wonderful things with the world, because that's how we all get better, right?
Yeah.
I personally need to see somebody moving forward. Otherwise, I'm not going to move.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say this, when I think of Facebook, there's the memories, and it is easy to go back in time on Facebook, right?
Yes.
Like it is so easy to do.
Too easy.
But it's not as easy on LinkedIn. And in some way, to you can scroll down. I mean, but it's really, what have you produced lately within the LinkedIn realm, especially within that activity. And that's, I think it's smart. It's smart that they're doing that, because they've been around a long time, and the workforce has been, there's been some people who've been on it right from the very beginning with them. And I find that it's important when I look at a person and I'm sort of evaluating, I'm trying to understand who they are. I'll look at their profile and I'll look at their activity, and I love to see that they're creating. It doesn't have to be every day or multiple times a day, but just even if it's once a week or once a month, something that says this person has something to say. This person has something to offer. There's value here.
Well, I love that idea too of getting into a cadence. Like I think about how when we started the show, we were kind of setting up like, what's the cadence? And the conversation was, how do you get your audience used to something? Like my favorite podcasts, I know that my favorite podcasts are going to be in my phone, downloaded and ready to go on Tuesday morning. Shout out to you, Bill Simmons and the Rewatchables. I love you. But I know that's going to be there and I can count on it. And I love that idea of, even if it's just once a month, you can always increase the cadence, but get yourself in that pattern and in that habit of, this is when I share what's on my mind or what I'm thinking about or what I'm doing, and get in the cadence.
Have you ever read the book, The Little Prince?
No.
Have you ever? It's a French children's book. You probably have seen the imagery. It's like the little prince and his little rose on the moon. Have you ever seen that?
I think I have. I have seen that.
Like a memory of it.
Recognize the name. Yeah.
Well, in the book, in the book, the little prince befriends a fox, and the fox says, "I want you to tame me. I want you to tame me. I'm a wild animal, but I want you to tame me." And the little prince says, "How? How do I tame you?" And the fox says, "You come back to see me every time at the exact same time each day. Because if you don't, I don't know when to expect you. I start to get frustrated. But if you want to tame me, then, show up. I need a regular schedule, and you need to keep sitting closer and closer to me." And that just kept resonating in my mind as you were saying that,
Yeah.
because I think it's the same
Mm-hmm.
idea. You have to be consistent. It's that consistency that, people, they might not even realize that they're waiting. But,
Mhm.
when they see it and they see you and you're showing up and you have something to say,
Mm-hmm.
that's what
Mhm.
really forges trust.
I feel like that's such a good starting point. I feel like that gives me something, like I'm sitting here thinking, okay, like I could post on Monday evenings every evening and just set that for a goal as myself in terms of I'm going to show up in some capacity on a Monday nights. And then I've got a week to think about like what I want to share with my audience. Like, so I love that that feels really tangible as a
Mm-hmm.
starting point for
Mm-hmm.
that. And I know you talked about how LinkedIn is just this really positive place. And that's one of the things that I really love about LinkedIn is just that it does seem to be more uplifting, more celebratory
Yeah.
type of place. However, I feel like there's a dark side to that, in that there is a lot of comparison that
Oh, yeah.
happens in the celebration for other people and seeing other people winning. That is sometimes really, really hard to overcome, because it's like, oh, this person, maybe I graduated with him. And like I saw one of the guys that I graduated with, he just made partner at his law firm, which I am so thankful for. But I'm like, oh, he just made partner? What am I doing? Like,
Our old friend
so
imposter syndrome coming right back in to
Yeah.
say, hey, I'm still
exactly.
here.
Exactly. So, but with that being said, like there are people that I see on LinkedIn who do also kind of, like I talked about, like pull back that curtain a little bit and like show maybe not the not so positive things of what has gone on in their day or their career or their year or whatever that is. So how have you seen, in terms of what you recommend for people, the balance between super positive but also super authentic? And I think there's a place for both, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes positive and authentic aren't always synonymous
Mhm.
with each other. So like, what's the place for that in LinkedIn?
In some ways, when I think of helping the average professional on, out there embrace LinkedIn, I want to say to them, don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Just
Mm-hmm.
decide that you're going to get active, and 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 post what happened in your day. Don't get too caught up in, is this authentic? Am I being too cringy? Like
Mm-hmm.
those are the things that stop people from posting.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was writing my For Dummies book, one thing that I found is when I had the deadlines and I had to meet, it was like 30 pages every week, and it was hard. It was hard to do this. But, I was writing and writing and writing. The more I wrote, the more it started coming out of me in every other way. I was suddenly journaling more. I was blogging more. I was posting more on Facebook. I was posting more on Twitter. It was like the more I posted, the more I was writing, the more it just sort of came out of me. And so, what I would want a person to recognize is, right now you're not posting. And that's why it's not coming out of you, right? A
Mm-hmm.
body in motion
Mm-hmm.
tends to stay at motion. A body at rest tends to stay at rest. You're at rest right now. But once you say to yourself, look, I'm going to post, and right now, don't overthink it. Think in terms of, what are the questions that people often ask you. Maybe those are great posts. Maybe you're reading a book. Post that. I don't want to tell anyone right now, you're going to have to expose a huge issue that took place.
Sure.
That's going to take nuance that will come, but it's not. Don't worry about that right
Mm-hmm.
now. Celebrate someone right now. Answer a question right now. Share a link to a fabulous tool. Think in the positive. Think of things that excite you, that help you, and people are going to respond to that. And then as you start moving down that path and you start to produce more and you start to, at that point, you're going to know what excites your audience. You're going to know where you stand. You're going to have experienced a lot more posting and the examples. And I really do believe that you're going to understand what makes sense for you, because it's going to be different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And Hannah, I have a piece to follow up on that with some encouragement, because I had a bit of a failure to launch situation in post high school and into college, where I needed to do some personal growth before I could really start to achieve the things I wanted to achieve. And through that process, I did have a lot of situations where, like, I saw friends graduating and I'm like, man, I'm still 3 years away from this, or this type of thing. And the encouragement that I want to give to you and the audience is that, you're going to get that. You're going to get there when you get there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I always tell people, look, there's a reason we put blinders on horses when they're racing, right? Like, we're not completely isolating them. They can hear, they can feel, they've got all their other senses, but that one sense, we want them focused on themselves. And that's my encouragement to folks who might be sitting there saying, like, man, I'm not there yet. No, you'll get there. You'll get there. Just keep going. You'll get there when you get there. And
That
that's
is
okay.
That advice is so similar to what my father used to say to me back when I was in sales. And it was like, oh, he made that sale. I didn't make the sale. Like, they're doing this. And I remember my father said, put your blinders on.
Yeah. Run your
Put
race.
your blinders on. It doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. And you just have to, like you said, run your race. It's you do you keep moving forward. And, they might be celebrating, but who knows? Maybe they're working until 9 o'clock every night. And maybe, they hate
Very
getting
good
up in the
point.
morning. And, maybe they're doing, everyone has their own battle that they're fighting.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you don't see that. You don't see again, someone's working till 9 o'clock, and maybe they went to bed and they didn't get to say goodnight to their kids,
Mm-hmm.
and they made the sale, and they're looking at you saying, you know what? Donna got to say goodnight to her family, and I missed that. And so there's always something that you don't see in that, it's easy to get caught up in it's human nature, right? We look at the things that people see, and it's something I have to remind myself, which is like, there's somebody out there that I have something that I don't value as much as somebody else does, because it's mine. I have it, right? Like, I'm not valuing it in the same way. And that's an interesting reflection sometimes to think about, is like, kind of divorcing yourself a little bit from being so caught up in that comparison. And it's, I tried to do a gratitude journal. I'm terrible at journaling, but it's that same type of mentality, right? Where it's like, I am trying to find those types of things every day, and that's something that helps.
Let's talk about something tactical, though. So
Oh, yes, please.
let's say you're going through your LinkedIn feed and it's celebration after celebration, and you start to feel like, oh gosh, like, where am I in my world? Like, where am I in my life? Whatever it might be. Stop and expand your network. Stop and turn it from
point.
top updates to most recent updates.
Hey, there you go.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right? So maybe it's not imposter syndrome. Maybe what it really is maybe your network is so small, and you're just getting hit with the same thing over and over and over again. And of course a person's going to feel bad. So let's expand our network. Let's open up our lens to allow more light to shine through.
Yes.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Donna and Joey, I feel like y'all have spoken like so much like truths over me and our audience. And like, I think this time together has felt a little bit like therapy for me.
I feel very unburdened right now. I'm feeling great.
No, like, I feel empowered to go post on LinkedIn and to show up there. So, which is exactly what I was hoping for just me, even our listeners. Like, I hope that y'all feel empowered to go show up on LinkedIn. And I also hope that y'all feel empowered to expand your network by reaching out to me, Joey, and Donna after listening to this episode. So, Donna, beyond that, how can our listeners connect with you? Like, what is the best way that you recommend that for them?
I would say certainly visit my profile and hit the follow button. That way
Mhm.
you can get all my crazy updates that I'm posting on LinkedIn. But also visit my website. It's linkedin-makeover.com. And if you click on free resources, I've got a slew of free tools. I have a LinkedIn headline generator. We just did it. It's a personal branding assessment. You answer some questions and really find out how are you presenting to your
Mhm.
audience, and what can you do to level up, and what are the recommendations you can do to make some tweaks. So it's a free assessment. So definitely check that out. And there's a slew of other things there. So I would definitely say check out the free resources, and consider investing, in yourself, in your story, in your brand, and recognizing it's okay to ask for help and to work with someone to really unleash what's inside of you.
I love that you
I
call
love
it an
that.
investment too, because that's really what it is. It's not an expense, it's an investment. You're investing in yourself, you're investing in your future, and
Yeah. And it's
it's
the best return.
I would say, and it's time well spent,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Well, Donna, this has been a pleasure. One thing that we do love to kind of end shows with, and I will say the 40 minutes have like absolutely flown by. I think we
Flown.
could talk for much longer. We had someone on a show a while ago ask us the type of question that made Hannah and I both simultaneously go, "Huh, that's interesting." So we try to ask it to all of our guests at the end of the show. It's and I'm very curious to hear your answer to this, because you've been so open and honest and transparent with us about your story and how you do these things. So we like to ask people, especially in like the LinkedIn world, right, where we're talking about all of our accomplishments, but it's typically work related.
Mhm.
So you are a storytelling coach, you are a marketing guru, you're a branding genius. I'm putting genius on there because I
Thank you.
think you're a genius. What is your and? What else is there about Donna that we don't know that we should know about you in terms of how you're spending your time, your interests, other hobbies, things like that?
For the longest of time, I was purely a business person.
Mm-hmm.
I really was. But 10 years ago, I met my husband,
Mm.
and I have two little boys. And so I am a mother. Oh my goodness, am I a mother? I never thought I'd ever
Mm-hmm.
be a mother, but here I am,
Uh-huh.
a mother. And my youngest son is on the spectrum. He has ADHD
Okay.
and MERLD, and so I am the mom of a son with special needs, and that's huge for me. It's
Mm-hmm.
all encompassing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it also gives me a lot more focus when I am working and I'm helping people. It allows me to see a much bigger picture than I think other
Mm-hmm.
people can. Um, and I'll tell you something really crazy. This might not be my but my husband is turning 14 at the end of next month.
So we've got a leap year.
He's a leap year
I was like,
baby.
wait,
Okay.
what? My brain did not process that as fast
I,
as Joey's did, clearly.
I am fascinated with leap year babies. I'm just gonna I was born in September. It was never gonna happen to me. So
I'm a September one too. We're Virgo, right? Or are you a Libra? Are you at
I'm
the
right
very
on the
end?
cusp. So I'm on September 22nd, which is the equinox. So, everything's changing. So like my wife loves to say, like, Joey, you don't really fit well in either box. Like you've got some Virgo, you've got some Libra, you've got a little bit of both.
Virgo
He's
is
a
a hard
unicorn.
one.
That's what he is. He's a unicorn.
A
I,
purple
I
squirrel
that's
spelled
also,
wrong.
unicorn also means this guy's challenging. A problem. Well, Donna, thank you so much. That was truly a joy for us, and a pleasure. And we are not connected on LinkedIn. I will be connecting with you on
We're
LinkedIn.
changing that
Same.
like
Yeah.
Yes, that's
immediately,
going to
aren't
happen
we?
as soon as we end record. And I know I'm looking forward to some of the things that I've been listening to and thinking about in terms of kind of getting a little bit more active there and working on some of the things we're talking about. I'm sure our audience is too. And I'm going to encourage everybody to take some time, get it, connect with us, connect with everybody so that we can, just build this great community. Because I think we're building a wonderful community with this show. I think we're building a wonderful community with people and folks that we're talking about within our network. And I can't wait to see where things go in the future.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Enjoy this podcast? Visit our website, summitcpa.net, to get more tips and strategy for achieving business success. We're here to be a resource in this ever-changing industry.